Viewer discretion is advised.
What I feel after all of this is it's not about punishing. If somebody has, is struggling and has difficulties, you don't punish them for that. And I think a lot of these programs feel like, the kid is being punished. And I don't think that's a great way to go. I mean, how do you feel about it,
I
Nick?
don't care if anyone calls me a Sally because I'm a snail and I'm never gonna fail. And you know what? You're gonna have to bail me out of jail.
A celebrated Hollywood family. A son battling demons no one could see. Then on December 14th, 2025, everything shattered. But what investigators uncovered 5 years earlier would become the most shocking twist in this nightmare. In the exclusive Brentwood neighborhood of Los Angeles, Rob and Michele Reiner lived what appeared to be a charmed life. Emmy-winning director, acclaimed photographer, a marriage spanning 36 years. Yet within their home, a quiet battle had been waging for nearly 2 decades. This case would force America to confront an uncomfortable truth about mental illness, family love, and the limits of the legal system. Because sometimes, the people we try hardest to save are the ones we cannot reach. On the afternoon of December 14th, 2025, 27-year-old Romy Reiner crossed the street from her home to check on her parents. What she found in the master bedroom would haunt her forever. Her father, Rob Reiner, 78 years old, dead from multiple stab wounds. Moments later, paramedics arriving at 3:38 p.m. discovered Michele Singer Reiner, 70, had suffered the same fate. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner would later confirm both died within minutes from sharp force injuries. Before we go further, quick question. Have you ever had someone close to you struggle with addiction or mental illness? Just comment yes or no. Your engagement helps this story reach others who need to hear it. Rob Reiner wasn't just a director. He was a cultural icon who shaped American cinema. The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me, A Few Good Men. Before that, he made America laugh as Meathead on All in the Family, the son of legendary comedian Carl Reiner. Michele Singer Reiner was a force herself, photographer, producer, LGBTQ+ advocate. Together, they had 3 children, Jake, Nick, and Romy. To Hollywood, they represented success. To their children, they were simply mom and dad. But one of those children was locked in a battle that would consume the family for 18 years. Nicholas Reiner was 14 when he first entered rehab. Not 17, not 16, 14 years old. By the time he was 19, he'd cycled through 18 different treatment facilities, 18 attempts to get clean. Between those stays, he lived on the streets in Maine, New Jersey, and Texas. Homeless, addicted, lost. In 2016, Nick told People magazine about those years. Sleeping in homeless shelters, using drugs while his famous father desperately tried every expert, every program, every solution money could buy. Nothing worked. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please share this video. Sometimes just knowing others understand can save a life.
Scared to get in trouble if I were to tell them the truth, because they always say, be honest, be honest, be honest, and that's the best policy. I'm lucky in the sense that I have parents that care about me, and because of that, when I would go out and do, things like drugs and stuff like that, I'd feel a tremendous amount of guilt, because I'd think, oh, they're thinking about me right now, they want me to do good.
In 2015, Rob and Nick attempted something extraordinary. They made a film together. Being Charlie wasn't just another addiction drama. It was Nick's story. He co-wrote it with a friend he met in rehab. Rob directed. The film follows Charlie Mills, the drug-addicted son of an actor running for governor. Charlie resents his parents, rebels against treatment, and struggles to stay clean. During the promotional tour, Rob said something heartbreaking to reporters. "I'd rather you hate me than be dead in the street." That was a line he'd actually said to Nick in real life. The film was their attempt at reconciliation. In one scene, Nick had written, "Charlie hugs his estranged father." Nick later told an interviewer, "That meant a lot to my dad, because it was sort of like I was accepting him back in." But films don't cure addiction. And by 2019, police were responding to incidents at the Reiner home involving Nick once again. Here's where the story takes its shocking turn. In 2020, Nick Reiner was placed under a mental health conservatorship, not the kind Britney Spears endured. This was an LPS conservatorship, named after California's Lanterman Petrus Short Act. This type of conservatorship only happens after involuntary psychiatric hospitalization. A doctor initiates it. A judge approves it. It's reserved for people deemed gravely disabled due to mental illness. Stephen Baer, a licensed fiduciary, was appointed as Nick's conservator. That meant Baer, not Nick's parents, controlled decisions about psychiatric treatment and medication. Two sources familiar with Nick's case told the New York Times he'd been diagnosed at different times with both schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, a condition combining psychotic symptoms with severe mood disturbances. The conservatorship lasted 1 year, ending in 2021. Why it wasn't renewed remains unclear. By December 2025, Nick was living in a guest house on his parents' property in Brentwood. He was on medication for schizophrenia. According to sources, it was working, but the side effects were harsh. About a month before his parents' deaths, Nick switched medications. Friends noticed the change almost immediately. His behavior became increasingly erratic. On the evening of December 13th, Nick attended a holiday party at comedian Conan O'Brien's home with his parents. Other guests noticed him standing alone by the fire pit, smoking, speaking to no one. While others wore festive attire, Nick appeared in a hoodie, hat, and jeans. At some point that evening, Nick and his father had an argument. Sources describe Rob chastising his son for inappropriate conduct. Another source disputed the severity, saying the family had grown used to Nick's behavior. They left the party together. Less than 24 hours later, Rob and Michele would be dead. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on mental health treatment in America. Are we doing enough? This conversation matters. Saturday night passed. Sunday morning came. By afternoon, Romy grew concerned. She walked across the street to her parents' home. At 3:38 p.m., her roommate called 911. Romy had fled the house after discovering her father's body. She didn't know yet that her mother was also dead. Los Angeles Police Department officers responded to what they initially classified as a death investigation. Within hours, it became a homicide case. By 9:15 that evening, LAPD gang officers spotted Nick Reiner in University Park, near USC, about 15 miles from the Brentwood home. Security footage from an Arco gas station captured his final moments of freedom. He wanders into the store wearing a baseball cap, jeans, and jacket, a red backpack over his shoulder. He starts toward the refrigerators, then walks back out. 12 seconds later, he returns, grabs a drink, and stands in line at the register. At 9:15 p.m., 4 police vehicles surrounded him on Exposition Boulevard and Vermont Avenue. He didn't resist. On December 16th, Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman charged Nick Reiner with 2 counts of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of multiple murders. That special circumstance changes everything. It makes Nick eligible for either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. On December 17th, Nick made his first court appearance wearing a blue suicide prevention smock. He spoke only once. "Yes, Your Honor." His attorney, Alan Jackson, a high-profile lawyer known for defending Karen Red, waived Nick's right to a speedy trial. Then on January 7th, 2026, something unexpected happened. Jackson withdrew from the case. Standing outside the courthouse, Jackson told reporters, "Circumstances beyond our control, but more importantly, circumstances beyond Nick's control, have made it impossible for us to continue." Then he said something extraordinary. "What we've learned, and you can take this to the bank, is that pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that." Legal experts immediately speculated about money issues. Jackson is prohibited from discussing specifics, but the timing suggested either payment problems or a fundamental disagreement about legal strategy. Nick is now represented by Deputy Public Defender Kimberly Green. His arraignment has been postponed to February 23, 2026. Here's why the conservatorship matters so much. First-degree murder requires premeditation. It requires the defendant to have the mental capacity to form intent. Nick's documented history of severe mental illness, his medication change just weeks before the killings, and his year under conservatorship all suggest his mental state may have been profoundly compromised. Former prosecutor Dmitry Gorin explained to reporters, "If the mental illness was such that it didn't manifest the intent to kill, he could be guilty of a lesser degree of murder, or possibly manslaughter. This isn't about whether Nick committed the act. Police say he's responsible for his parents' deaths. This is about whether he had the mental capacity to understand what he was doing." District Attorney Hochman remains confident. "We are fully confident that a jury will convict Nick Reiner beyond a reasonable doubt of the brutal murder of his parents." But Jackson's final statement before withdrawing suggests the defense sees something different in the legal definition of murder. Through all of this, Jake and Romy released a single statement. "Words cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing every moment of the day. The horrific and devastating loss of our parents, Rob and Michele Reiner, is something that no one should ever experience. They weren't just our parents. They were our best friends." The statement didn't mention Nick. They asked for speculation to be tempered with compassion and humanity. Rob and Michele Reiner fought for their son for 18 years. They tried conventional rehab, experimental programs, tough love, and acceptance. They made a film hoping art could heal what medicine couldn't.
A great way to go. I mean, how do you feel about it, Nick?
About what part about?
About what I was just saying about the idea of the tough love and all of that stuff.
I'm here, so it worked.
In 2015, during the Being Charlie press tour, Michele told the Los Angeles Times, "We were so influenced by these people. They would tell us he's a liar, that he was trying to manipulate us, and we believed them." Rob added, "When Nick would tell us that it wasn't working for him, we wouldn't listen. We were desperate, and because the people had diplomas on their wall, we listened to them when we should have been listening to our son. They tried to fix what was broken. They tried to save who they could. In the end, the very system designed to protect Nick, the conservatorship, the medication changes, the psychiatric treatment may have been part of a cascade that led to December 14th. This isn't a story about good versus evil. It's a story about mental illness, about the limits of love, and about a legal system trying to determine accountability when someone's mind betrays them."
For everyone, it's different. For me, the noise was basically, living in the family that I live in and catching heat for that sort of stuff. And also just...
For being a Reiner?
I guess. I mean, people would like to think that's a real bigger deal than it actually is. But it's really like, I was an emotional kid who had problems, and I just was not so fond of myself. So I kind of, had problems in that way. But in terms of the thing you were saying before, it's like, I think that our relationship was not as it was portrayed in the film. Like, there were this sort of like holding the line and being tough, but like we didn't ever argue like quite like that. I mean, we did, I guess, to a degree, but it was never.
He was fiery. You don't seem very fiery to me. You seem like you might just...
I get crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You don't want to set me off.
If this case made you think differently about mental health and the justice system, please subscribe. We cover cases that challenge how we understand crime, punishment, and justice in America. Nick Reiner's arraignment is scheduled for February 23rd, where he'll finally enter a plea. But his case is far from the only one where mental illness intersects with murder charges in shocking ways. Thanks for watching, and I'd see you on the next one. Stay safe out there.